I'm Rick Edelman. Today, oil and natural gas provide us with power. But what will power our cars, homes, and computers in 30 or 50 or even 100 years? We'll look at investing today in tomorrow's resources. And how do you save for tomorrow while you're living in the present? It's a balancing act. And another balancing act is blending work, family, and personal time. So Gene Edelman will give us some tips on how balance leads to a happier life. All that and so much more on this edition of The Truth About Money.
This program is funded in part by TD Ameritrade. At TD Ameritrade, we support investors and independent registered investment advisors every day, providing access to tools, research, and educational resources that help you pursue your goals with confidence.
I'm Ed Burns. I've spent a lot of time around cameras. However, I've never actually swallowed one before. Till now. It's a camera the size of a pill that lets your doctor see inside of you. That's kind of awesome.
Technology is evolving. We believe the way to invest should evolve as well. A prospectus is available at 1-800-iShares, which includes investment objectives, risks, fees, expenses, and other information that you should read and consider carefully before investing. Investing involves risk, including possible loss of principal.
I'm Rick Edelman, and the truth about money is that you need to have a balanced portfolio and a balanced life. The answer is not just simple, it's just dollars and cents.
Hi, Rick. My name's Franklin Weichelt, and I work for one of the largest real estate corporations in San Diego. And I'd actually like to know how we can secure our long-term financial needs instead of addressing the immediate short-term financial needs, such as bills, and what kind of investments we should make to secure that long-term financial.
That's a great question because we all recognize we are dealing with conflicting interests, aren't we? We're not only trying to pay our bills, but we're also trying to pay future bills, such as college for kids or buying a house or retirement or what have you. Well, how do you balance the two? Well, you said it yourself. The key is balance. What we need to do is develop a financial plan. The financial plan will take a very close look at your current expenses, figuring out how to reduce current expenses as much as reasonably can be done, to free up as much cash as reasonably can be done, so that we can use that cash to fund a piggy bank that we'll later use to pay those future expenses. It's really that simple. What are your current resources, and how much of your current resources can be diverted to pay for future needs? This is called financial planning. It's what people like me do for a living all the time. You'll discover that the process is remarkably easy and simple. Some people actually consider it fun. And a good financial planner can help you figure out exactly how to handle your current expenses so that you can maximize the opportunity to save for future expenses. The real problem we discover is when people focus on only one of those two issues instead of both. They pay only attention to current bills without any regard to the future. Or, equally bizarre, they pay only attention to the future and no attention to the present, and they live like misers. They're in misery and they're not having any fun at all. Life's too short for that too. A proper financial plan will enable you to enjoy your life today and ensure that you'll continue to be able to enjoy that life long into the future. From California's movie studios to New York's theater district, we recently asked just one question, Celebrity Edition. What is the best advice to give kids about money?
Yeah, my dad was very bright. He said, make a lot of it and spend a lot of it. And he never had any. But so I made a lot and then I gave it to him and he spent a lot.
I'm trying to teach them the value of them. I know they grow up in a kind of a crazy world and try to teach them the value of work and money. We certainly try to explain to them the amount of work and labor that goes into creating value, and that, you know, $10 next week's better than $2 today, and just the simple lessons.
We live in an affluent area here in Connecticut, and mostly everybody is in that business of money. And it's funny because people, they want to talk about funds and, you know, stocks, but nobody wants to talk about money. Nobody likes talking about what they make. I mean, there's very few people that I know what they make. So it is. People don't like talking about money, but I, with my kids, I'm completely honest with them, and I try to tell them as much as I can, so that they kind of get a grasp of it. And I think at an early age, if they understand and they know how much things cost, and you know, they'll be better prepared for it.
School, learn how to handle money, learn how to write a check, learn what a mortgage is. If you don't have the time or the inclination to know about the stock market, get somebody like we have who's a family friend and a broker, and keep an eye on your investments too.
Thanks, Jeffrey. That was solid and basic advice. 2 thumbs up. Sometimes we need to really start with the basics, and I put the troops through some of that at the Army's Fort Belvoir in basic financial training.
So my question is, how do Marines, sailors, soldiers, how do we invest? How do we teach our Marines to invest? How do we invest ourselves? And specifically, Roth IRA, TSP, TSP Roth. Save money for yourself, but we don't necessarily know which ones to tell them to invest in or do ourselves.
Great question. I'm going to take that fundamental question of how do I handle my money, and I'm going to give it to you in 4 basic steps. Step number 1 is to join the thrift savings plan. It is the best first way to save. Do it before you do anything else. Do it to the maximum you are permitted on a pre-tax basis. That's number 1. It's the best because it's the easiest. Once you sign up, the money comes out of your paycheck, you'll never miss it, you'll never notice it. It lowers your taxes, which means if you put in $1, it really doesn't cost you $1. So it's a fabulously efficient way to do it. And it's totally painless because you get used to it and you won't even notice that it's happening. So number 1, join the thrift savings plan. Number 2, pay off credit card debt. Interesting that I said that's number 2, not number 1. Very often, other people will say, first thing you gotta do is pay off your debts. You know why I don't say that's number 1? Because if you wait to pay off your debts, you'll be waiting forever. You're never gonna get rid of your debts. Debt is an integral part of any responsible household. Mortgage debt, student loan debt, auto debt, in some cases, medical debt. Only when you get to irresponsible debt, personal loans, payday loans, pawn loans, high credit card interest rate loans, get rid of those. But don't let your effort to get rid of those interfere with your need to start saving for retirement. So number 1 is retirement. Number 2, get rid of the credit cards. After you've gotten rid of the credit cards, you're ready for step 3, build cash reserves. You need to have at least 1 year's worth of spending, not income, but spending, in the bank. Checking, savings, money markets, bank CDs, sitting there as a rainy day fund. So if something happens unexpectedly, you got a bucket of money to tap into. You know, it's kind of funny once. I said this and was talking with someone and they showed me they had $5,000 of credit card debt and $5,000 in the bank. And I said, you need to take the money out of the bank and pay off the credit card debt. You know what they said? They said, I can't do that. If I do that, I won't have any money. I said, you don't have any money now, you just don't know it. It's ridiculous to have $5,000 in the bank earning 0 with $5,000 on a credit card at 18%. It's nuts, it makes no sense. So, number 1, join the thrift savings plan. Number 2, pay off credit card debt. Number 3, build cash reserves. Number 4, you're now ready to go additional savings of a long-term nature. Mutual funds, exchange-traded funds on a highly diversified basis, but focus on it in that pattern, and that's the right way to go.
We'd prefer tax deductible than tax deferred.
Here's a related question people ask. Should I do, if I'm going to do an IRA, should I do the deductible IRA or should I do a Roth IRA? Here's the difference between the two. With the deductible IRA, you get a tax deduction right now when you put the money in, and when you pull the money out in retirement, you'll pay taxes at that time. The Roth is the opposite. There's no tax break today, but later the money is tax-free. So which is a better deal? The tax deduction now on your contribution or the tax-free withdrawal later? Which is the better deal? Which one, if you were to invest in one versus the other, which creates more wealth over the course of your lifetime? The answer? It's neutral. There is no difference. A lot of people believe that the Roth IRA increases wealth. It doesn't. The Roth IRA is simply a pay me now or a pay me later kind of scenario. This is why Congress created it and allows it. Congress doesn't care. They're going to get their money either way. They're going to give it to them now or you're going to give it to them later. Congress doesn't care. So our attitude is this. If you're in a low tax bracket today, 15% or less, choose the Roth. Because your tax bracket is so low, you're not getting much of a benefit from the deductible, so you might as well take the tax-free benefit later. But if your tax bracket is higher than 15%, we say choose the deductible IRA, even though you're going to have to pay taxes later. And one of the reasons we say this, and this could help you decide whether you agree with what I've just said, one of the reasons we say, even though the Roth might be a better deal because it's tax-free later, that's assuming by the time you retire, it's still tax-free. So I have a simple question for you by a show of hands. Who here trusts Congress? You're all supposed to say yes because you work for them, remember. So I don't know that I believe that the tax code will be intact in 20, 30, 40 years the way it is today, and therefore I'm not willing to bet that they're going to honor their promise. In their efforts to raise tax revenue, or if they go to a totally different tax system, that Roth IRA promise won't even exist. So unless you're in a low bracket, skip the Roth.
Thank you, sir.
The federal income tax has existed since A, 1776, B, 1812, C, 1863, or D, 1913. Stay tuned and we'll be right back with the answer.
The 1960s gave us the space race. Now, 50 years later, we're in an energy race. And XPRIZE board member Greg Marynyak tells us that this race is even more important. Greg, there is massive confusion, I'm convinced, among consumers about energy. We're obsessed with it. Everybody is desperately worried that we're importing too much oil, that we're running out of oil, and that we're going to return to the dark ages when the light bulbs go out.
Here in the developed world, we live like gods because we have access to lots of clean, cheap energy. And we'd like to get cleaner energy than we have now so that we can sustain this infinitely. I believe we're in a race. It's a race to transition to these infinitely abundant sources of energy before the bad consequences of being on the backside of the energy curve hit. The good news is we're surrounded by an abundance of energy. We've got the sun, 8 light minutes away, and it's bathing us with tens of thousands of times more energy than we use today. So my concern is that we make the transition to infinitely available energy sources before we feel the economic impacts of being on the backside of the power curve as far as...
Meaning it's always about supply and demand. And if there is a limited supply, but an increasing demand, prices rise.
Absolutely.
So we'll experience a dramatic increase in the price of oil before we experience a decline in its availability.
I believe that that's true.
If we are in a race, it is to replace our depleting and environmentally disturbing resources with a resource that is abundant and relatively harmless, solar. So how are we doing in that race?
Well, we're in the early stages of it. As long as we can get electricity out of the wall for ridiculously cheap prices, there's really no incentive to tackle that problem here. But if you go to Africa, for example, where they don't have grid power, those people are willing to spend money, and they do spend money on power. They spend way too much money on power. People there will get on a bus and spend half a day to go to a nearby city so they can charge their cell phones. So a person like that is a very good potential customer for a little solar panel that'll charge their phone or some other small device that will enable it. And I think instead of them getting our innovation hand-me-downs from the developed world, what will happen is the inverse. We'll be buying equipment that was originally designed for use in places without grid power, and it'll get perfected by the markets over there, and then we'll buy it and use it when we need to be independent of the grid.
Is this new energy race being led by and run by governments, or is it being done by entrepreneurs?
Well, it's both. There is a lot of good energy activity, and those of us that believe in free market solutions still like having the underpinnings of government R&D. It helps everybody. It's a rising tide that lifts all boats. So that's a good thing. It won't be one or the other. It'll be both. When there is some tax on carbon or something equivalent to that, some cost for emitting carbon, people will find ways not only to emit less of it, but better than that, what they'll do is they'll recycle those carbon atoms. So you wind up creating lots of jobs and benefit for people. We know that if we switched from vehicles that get 20 miles per gallon to vehicles that on average get 100 miles per gallon, we'd have a 5-fold decrease in that huge chunk of the pie. It's good from a standpoint of energy independence for America, and it's terrific for minimizing greenhouse gases.
But you would also reduce ExxonMobil's profits dramatically if all of a sudden they're not selling as much of their product.
Well, ExxonMobil and the other big energy companies have figured out that they've changed utterly in our lifetimes. They used to own the oil in the ground in the countries where it was. They don't anymore. They process it. So they're in the energy handling business. In fact, ExxonMobil has made a huge investment in looking at how to make things like biofuels from algae and try to make algae that sweat oil through the cell membranes, and you could just gather up the oil from this stuff without killing the algae and without having to expend a lot of energy and effort to extract the valuable byproducts. If you want to have more renewables, the thing you've got to fix is storage. So if you could do things like split water into hydrogen and oxygen, if you just do that with conventional electrodes, electrolysis, like you've probably done in a high school science experiment, it turns out it takes a lot of energy. But nature does it very, very efficiently, and it uses interesting catalytic chemistry to do it. And there are people now that are looking at ways to do this without using platinum as a catalyst. I just saw some work this week that uses iron oxide. And what do we normally call iron oxide? Rust. Well, this is special rust, but the most expensive part of their cell that breaks hydrogen out of water is the glass in the vessels that hold it. So it's pretty interesting. There is huge room for improvement.
So be diversified, don't make any big bets, and have a very long-term focus.
That's right.
Terrific. Greg, thanks so much.
Thank you.
How long has the federal income tax existed? The answer is D. The federal income tax began in 1913.
How do you know the money that you've invested for retirement is invested correctly and that it's doing what you want it to do? That's a pretty common question I get on my weekly radio show. Check this out. Maria, you're from Virginia.
About 5 years ago, I called the show and said I had been really stupid. In 25 years, I was putting half my money in TIAA, half in CREF, which was not very smart. I'm finally retiring this June. And how does one pick an advisor that is a specialist? Or does every advisor, for example, if I call your firm and I say I have this TIA CREF, I have questions, what I'm going to do, what I can do, how I take things out, and I'd like to do that before I talk to them so I know what is the right answer to give them.
Gotcha.
What are they going to tell me? Everybody does it?
It is very common, yeah. Certainly all the advisors at our firm are well-versed in TIA CREF, and I think that's probably true of most experienced advisors. And the reason I say that is that TIA CREF is one of the largest 403B providers in the country. So any advisor with any degree of experience at all is going to have clients who are school teachers or nurses, who are the two primary occupations involved with TIA CREF. So I would think it's pretty likely that the advisor you deal with is going to have experience with that organization. But that's simply the question you ask them when you're shopping around. You say, hi, I have TIA CREF. Do you have experience with that organization in providing advice regarding their program? And they either have experience or they don't. And it is really important, Maria,
yes,
that in your case, that the advisor does have experience with TIAA craft, because there is a lot of fine print, at least on the TIAA side, that many people are not familiar with. It isn't like an ordinary 401k. The biggest issue is the fact that when you put money into TIAA, you cannot take it out except at the rate of 10% per year.
10% a year.
It's a one-way trip, and a lot of people don't know that.
No, in fact, that's one of the biggest things that we've seen over the years is somebody getting ready for retirement says, I want to be real safe with my money until I figure out what I'm going to do. I'm going to take it all and put it into TIAA, and then whoops.
It's important, if you have TIAA CREF in your workplace, that you do talk with an independent, objective, fee-based advisor, unaffiliated with TIAA CREF, before you make any changes regarding your investment choices in the program. And so, Maria, that's what you want to do, is shop around and talk to advisors and ask that question. Do you have experience helping clients who have TIAA CREF?
Okay.
As a financial advisor, I believe managing money is no laughing matter, but comics at New York's Dangerfield's Comedy Club have a different take on personal finance.
My parents paid $5,000 a year to send me to Catholic high school. They are proud of me, huh? My two best friends from Catholic high school still talk to them all the time. One's a chiropractor, right? Yeah, and the other's a prosecutor. Yeah, those Sunday football games are fun for me, right? When they're talking about their jobs. I adjusted a 12-year-old girl with spina bifida so she could go into surgery, and now she's going to be okay. Yeah, and I just prosecuted an armed robber and put him away for 7 years. It's like, oh, yeah. I was at Dangerfields on Tuesday night telling a bunch of strangers how fat and broke I am.
If you could ask a financial advisor just one question, what would it be? Here's one we hear from a lot of people. What's the biggest mistake people make when investing?
They don't give thought to cash reserves. Everyone wants to talk about investing, everyone wants to invest, but they don't actually think about the what-if scenario. What if I lost my job? What if I lost my spouse? We really need to sit back and put the seatbelt on before we actually drive the car of investments.
I would say the biggest mistake that investors make is trying to time the market. Trying to determine when to get in and when to get out. You have to be right about 100% of the time for that not to have pretty devastating impact on your investments.
People make many important financial decisions too many times without consulting someone or asking them after the fact. Many times we'll see people after they have already made the decision and already acted. And many times people will come to us first and ask the right questions, and we'll help them do the right thing.
Asking an expert is always the right idea, but how do you know when an expert's not around that you're making the right choice? Well, I always seek the advice of my wife and business partner, Jean. She always knows what's right and what's fun. Here's Jean with The Other Side of Money.
We have schedules that are so booked to the minute. We wake up in the morning to the moment we put our head down on the pillow at night. Well, how about leaving a couple hours free? Now that's some kind of a change. And then how about seeing what fills those hours, not purposely filling them, but see what evolves and see what happens. So for 1 week, I unbooked everything, and I woke up on a Monday morning, I had nothing on my calendar. Now, some people, that would give you the heebie-jeebies, you know? It's like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? Where am I going? And what's gonna happen? You know what? The day filled itself, the week filled itself, and I got more done in that week by letting things come in that needed to come in than by purposely booking them. We book things that we think are priorities. We have given them more priority, more effort than we probably need to. I think if we take a good hard look, which is what I did with my calendar for that week, I think we will find that the stuff that was kind of sitting there under the surface really probably was a little bit more meaningful for us, but we kept pushing it down. We weren't letting it happen. So just look at the opportunity to create a little change by opening up some space in your day and see what happens.
Oh, look at that. It looks like it's time for me to clear out of here. Thanks, Jean. A few final words on this episode. The race is on. Scientists are burning the midnight oil, trying to win that energy race. Let's just hope the midnight oil keeps burning long enough till that race is won. And when it comes to investing versus living, you need to find a balance that's right for you, because that is the truth about money. I'm Rick Edelman. I'll see you next time. To learn more about the topics we discussed on this episode and a chance to ask your questions, visit our website at truthaboutmoneytv.com. And stay connected by liking us on Facebook and following us on Twitter.
This program is funded in part by TD Ameritrade. At TD Ameritrade, we support investors and independent registered investment advisors every day, providing access to tools, research, and educational resources that help you pursue your goals with confidence.
I'm Ed Burns. I've spent a lot of time around cameras. However, I've never actually swallowed one before. Till now. It's a camera the size of a pill that lets your doctor see inside of you. That's kind of awesome.
Technology is evolving. We believe the way to invest should evolve as well. A prospectus is available at 1-800-iShares, which includes investment objectives, risks, fees, expenses, and other information that you should read and consider carefully before investing. Investing involves risk, including possible loss of principal.